Welcome to another edition of the ISB show. Very special edition because we want to tell all our viewers out there from around the world who are celebrating Diwali a very happy Diwali. Rahi and I have both dressed up. Vic has dressed up in something, and Roy, of course, is dressed up in his traditional Diwali garb. But everyone out there celebrating happy Diwali, Sal Mubarak out there, and that's how we want to start it off, which is only appropriate that today we talk about India, boys, the Indian national football team. It's been a while. Some of our viewers have been demanding, where's our video about the Indian football national team? Well, here it is. And guys, we'll start off. It's a new year, so to speak. You know, of course, Diwali isn't exactly that, but it is, for all intents and purposes, we treat it as that and such. Maybe it's a new year and new Indian national team, boys.
Diwali is the festival of lights. Happy Diwali, everybody. There's been very little light in the world of Indian football, Bikram, in a long time, wouldn't you say?
There was some last year, but I think 2024 has been a year to forget.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about last year. Yeah.
No,
yeah. Last year was good, right? We had an opportunity to make the World Cup. Yeah.
But we didn't. We didn't follow through when we needed the most. 1 point out of 6 possible points against Afghanistan. That was the dagger after it started so well with that win in Kuwait. And then it just fizzled out as it tends to do. And now it's typical Indian football. The former coach, Timach, has had no shortage of words about what a disaster the federation, the administration, the president is. I don't know. We need positivity. Roy, you're a man from a country that's done pretty well over the past few years. So can you offer some advice, some support, some hope, man?
I can. If you want positivity, Rocky, Argentina is not the place to look. When things are going bad in Argentina, we are the most depressed country in the world by a million miles. When Messi wasn't performing for Argentina, we were a train wreck. So I'm not going to bring any positivity, but I have some ideas. I have plenty of ideas of how this country could turn it around. There's short-term and there's long-term, right? There's the short-term solution, which is what? You guys know already what it is. I'm sure we're going to touch on it. It's the Indonesia model. Open up the floodgates, allow for dual nationals. India is one of the, I don't know which other countries, but there's a handful of countries in the world that don't allow dual nationals. India is one of them. That is destroying India's chances of being a reputable soccer nation. There are tons of half Indians, quarter Indians, people with Indian grandparents, great grandparents living in England, playing in the championship, playing in Premier League, playing in Germany, who would love the opportunity to represent the national team of their ancestors, and they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to. India doesn't want them. What is this? What are they thinking? Is the Indian National Federation even interested in becoming a great footballing nation? If they are, they're doing nothing to achieve that. Nothing.
Is that the answer, Vic?
That's one of the answers.
I don't know. Look, it is a part of a solution, and it's something most other countries do. I don't know if there's firstly that many players of Indian origin or who would be eligible for an Indian passport who are around. There's a few, and I'm sure a lot will come out of the woodworks if this is a possibility. The other thing is, it's really not up to the federation. I think the rules are pretty clear. Like, the players have to have a passport of the nation. And I just don't expect that the Indian government is going to change things just for one sport, because this is the main sport where this is an issue. India isn't really competing in too many other sports where they're lacking players. It's cricket, it's hockey. There's enough players domestically. Indian football is not the one issue that's going to make India suddenly consider dual nationals, a policy which they haven't had since independence.
But let's talk about that, because there's OCI, right? And so for those who are not aware, there's basically the ability for people of Indian origin to get what's called an overseas citizen of India, which is not a full passport. I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, Vic, but I believe if the Indian government were to change the rules about that specifically, it would be okay with FIFA's rules based on having just an OCI.
If that's
my
the case,
understanding of the rule.
If it's something that doesn't require government intervention, then 100% they should do it. 100%. I mean, there's no reason not to.
It will require government intervention.
Mm.
It'll require government
Yeah.
intervention, but do you think that that's the
Yeah.
step the government needs to take?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I think just from a sporting perspective, right? Like it's something that every nation, like maybe not every nation, but a lot of nations use sport as a way of soft power as well. And I think having India on the international stage in the biggest sport in the world is only a positive. So 100%, the government should intervene in the sense that in the sense that it can, because I guess the question is, does it have to change the law on dual nationality, or does it have to change the law on what an OCI is eligible to do? And they are like, it is more on the technical side.
There's always exceptions, right? I think we're
Yeah.
talking so fundamentally about laws. And yes, the laws are in
Yeah.
place right now where it's
Yeah.
difficult and you can't do it. But there's always exceptions. And especially in
100%.
India, we know there's always ways around the law. If there's one country
Yeah.
where you can get around the law, right? So the fundamental question, Roy, is the question you bring up. Does this federation want this team to do well? And are they willing to
Exactly.
do everything possible for that to happen? And the problem for me is you can build the league all you want. You can increase the domestic game. But fundamentally, if the national team has a few big results, makes a big tournament, that'll transform the sport. That's the best way to hyper accelerate the growth of the game, Roy.
Yep. 1,000,000%. And Vic, you didn't say it directly, but I feel you insinuated that if it requires government intervention, it probably won't happen. It probably shouldn't happen. I think sport and government should be working in tandem only with positive matters. Once they get intertwined in a messy way, then it's a disaster. But you look at Argentina, you look at Saudi Arabia, you look at Indonesia, you look at all these countries who have been striving to become better over the last decades. There is some form of government intervention to help the national team grow. Why? Because a healthy national team, a successful national team, helps the country immensely. And when you have a country like India, the most populous country in the world, the untapped potential to build that fervor in the national team, to build that fervor in the League of India, it's going to create money. It's going to create jobs. It's going to create tourism. It's going to create everything. It's going to put India in the spotlight in sport internationally, because cricket is a massive sport, of course, but it's different. Soccer is the beautiful game. Soccer is the global game. And India has the population. They have the potential. If they change a couple rules, make it a little easier. Vic, you said there's not many players, but you also said they'll start coming out of the woodworks. They will.
Yeah.
Just like they did with Indonesia. If you asked Indonesia 10 years ago, how many half Indonesians there are? Oh, not many, maybe a handful. I guarantee you hundreds will come out of the woodworks that we never knew had a great grandparent from India. So that is the potential that this team has. And they're not unlocking it. They're leaving it. And the sad thing, one more thing, the sad thing is, what's the alternative? The infrastructure in India, from a soccer perspective, is a disaster. They don't have an infrastructure. Most regions in India don't even have a league or a team. You talk to Indians living in India. I did a ton of research on this. They don't know how to get involved. What's the pipeline to professional soccer? What's the pipeline to semi-professional soccer? They're just messing around. It's a big mess. There's no pipeline whatsoever. It's almost kind of like a much worse US soccer problem is what they're seeing in India.
Yeah, look, I completely agree with that. And I think, as a nation, you should try and maximize this. And we're not just talking about like smaller countries in football that are doing, that should be doing this. Even the best countries, if there was a player who's half German, half English, both countries will be fighting for that player. There's a lot of this that goes on, right? So I think even the biggest, most well-resourced nations try and squeeze out as much talent as they can. I think I've gone blank. The other thing I was going to say is
the Indian government is intervening.
Yeah. They heard you, Vic.
They don't
talking smack over there.
Spot. No, but the fandom. I mean, think about the Premier League, Vic. Biggest. I mean, Indians are the biggest fans. I mean, think about how many Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal fans. I mean, the viewership numbers in India are wild.
Yeah, massive. 100%. No. I completely agree with that. Like, if you're looking at it from a macro perspective, India has all the ingredients to be a footballing powerhouse at some point. I think what we're talking about is how to get there faster, right? I'm just saying, I don't disagree with you guys. I'm just saying, I don't think that this government is going to make a change legally for just one sport. If there's some like,
Vic,
like they're just not going to make dual nationality a thing.
I think you're downplaying the importance of this. You're saying just for one sport.
Yeah.
It's so much more than that. It
Of
is
course.
so much making exception for one sport. We're not talking about lacrosse here. We're not talking about water polo here. We're talking about the global game. This will do much more for India than just having a good national team. It will unlock a million different levers. And I mean, it's unimaginable potential of what this could do for India if they had a good national team.
And if there's one thing Indians are interested in, this government or any other Indian government, is progressing the Indian image on the global stage.
100%.
And can you imagine India at a World Cup? Something along those lines would be dramatic in terms of the impact.
Absolutely dramatic. Can you imagine watching India against Portugal at the 2026, let's say 2030 to be realistic, 2030 World Cup? It'll be 100% India in the stands. They will all go to the game. They will pack every single stadium. The viewership numbers will be viewership numbers we've never seen before in World Cups. It'll be insane.
It's funny you bring up Portugal. I went to the Portugal-Switzerland game in Doha at the World Cup, and the stadium was all Indians. They were just wearing Portugal jerseys.
Isn't that crazy? Imagine if they were there to watch India. What pride, immense pride. Oh my God. It's sad. One little rule. I know it's a lot harder than one little rule, but it's an effort worth making.
I mean, the U.S. is a good comp. They're talking also about there's no relegation in the league in India, so there's really no pressure on the players. There are other smaller changes that can make a difference as well, I think.
Yeah.
I think from the other changes perspective, we're talking about short term, we're talking about something the government has to do. Infrastructure-wise, like I said, nobody knows what the pipeline is. There isn't a youth academy system that's strong enough to actually develop. Who's the last player that India developed besides Chetri? Who have they ever developed?
I think that's the main name that comes to mind, right?
That's it. So, and look what Chetri has done on a global scale for the club. Nothing. He's gone to Kansas City and did nothing. He went to the championship and did nothing. And that's the one player they've ever developed. What does that say? It's symptomatic of a terrible development program or a non-existent development program. Something they don't have. India's doing nothing to better their national team. That's a fact. Anything they do, we'll see some improvement. There's short term and there's long term. I would start with the short term.
I agree, Roy. I agree. And would you start watching the team then?
I would start watching all of India's games. If they started getting some of these dual nationals, I looked up a list. There's the biggest one is probably Danny Bath from Blackburn Rovers. He was player of the season for Norwich City. Great center back.
He's there.
There's a list of about a dozen players who are playing in the championship. Norwich City, Leicester City, Frankfurt. So these are decent players. These are players who will immediately become the best players on the Indian national team.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think this is a topic that we should. This is just the start of our discussing this. It's something that as we move forward, as I said, I think it's just the beginning of the start of hopefully the emergence of India on the football scale, on the global scale. So more to come in terms of that. Again, want to say a very happy Diwali to everyone celebrating out there. And boys, anything you else want to add before we finish up here and let people go back to celebrating the Diwali weekend?
I'm just worried about the impact of the Indian government here. You saw we were disappearing during the video here and there. I don't know. We got to be careful, guys. We got to be careful about making claims about OCIs becoming citizens, okay?
Hey, I didn't say anything wrong. I'm pro-Indian government, whatever they do, whoever's in charge. Fully support you guys.
I will say one last thing. I don't
know
if
if I'm
for all
you
say
viewers,
it right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Roy.
I'm going to say Chalo Bharat Chalan. Did I say that right?
Almost. You did well enough.
Chalo Bharat Chalan. Is it Chalan?
I'll give you an easier one. I'll give you an easier one, Roy. This is how we usually end our videos when we got to India. Just say Chak De India. That's how we'll leave that to you.
Chak De India.
There we go.
Here we go.
That's it, Roy.